A sudden, sharp crawl begins deep inside your stomach, making your whole body twist in silent, helpless, painful agony. You scratch your itchy skin, but the tickling sensation remains deep underneath, where your own fingers can never hope to reach. Today, you simply buy medicine to kill the invaders. But for 99% of human history, this was not a rare infection. Back then, it was an inescapable part of daily life, and almost every human was eaten alive from the inside. Imagine waking up in a prehistoric cave, knowing that millions of invisible worms are already sharing your morning meal. Your ancestors did not just coexist with parasites, their bodies were living, breathing ecosystems for countless prehistoric invaders. From microscopic bacteria to massive tapeworms, these silent hitchhikers actively controlled how humans lived, ate, and survived. You might think our ancestors were clean and healthy in their wild, untouched forests, but that is a dangerous lie. Scientific analysis reveals a dark truth. Ancient human remains are packed with the fossilized calling cards of parasites. Wherever humans went, their worms followed, adapting to every climate, environment, and diet our ancestors discovered. How do we know this with absolute certainty about prehistoric people who died many thousands of years ago? The answer lies frozen in time, waiting for archaeologists to dig up the most disgusting secrets of our history. Researchers are now decoding these ancient secrets, showing that no one, not even kings, could escape the internal itch. But to find the earliest witness of this ancient war, we must look at a frozen body on an alpine mountain. What parasites did scientists find inside the world's most famous mummy? And what did they do to his body? In 1991, hikers in the Italian Alps discovered Ötzi, a 5,300-year-old mummy preserved perfectly in the ice. When scientists examined his ancient digestive tract, they made a shocking discovery that changed our understanding of prehistoric health. Inside Ötzi's colon, researcher Albert Zink found hundreds of fossilized eggs belonging to a parasite called whipworm. Whipworms are shaped like tiny whips, and they use their thin ends to sew themselves directly into your gut lining. Once inside, they feed on your blood, causing severe stomach pain, constant diarrhea, and a lifetime of physical weakness. Imagine climbing high frozen mountains while thousands of whipworms are slowly draining the strength from your body. But whipworms were not the only invaders tormenting this ancient hunter as he walked through the freezing wilderness. Tests showed Ötzi also carried Helicobacter pylori, a bacterium that causes painful stomach ulcers and constant digestive burning. His life was a daily struggle against cold, predators, and the burning pain inside his own stomach. Yet, Ötzier's agonizing condition was not unique. He represents the painful reality of almost every ancient human. Why were these parasites so incredibly common among our ancestors during this specific era of human history? The clue lies in a massive transition that happened when humans changed how they interacted with the world. Before this transition, hunter-gatherers were constantly moving, which actually kept them safe from many parasites. But everything changed when humans decided to settle down and build the very first permanent farming villages. How did the invention of farming turn our ancestors' new homes into the ultimate breeding grounds for parasites? When your ancestors stopped roaming and cleared forests to plant wheat, they fell into a dangerous biological trap. Stopping in one place meant they could no longer move away from their own accumulating waste and dirty surroundings. Parasite eggs from human feces accumulated in the dirt around their mud huts, waiting for a new host. Every time you stepped barefoot onto the damp soil, hookworm larvae would burrow directly through your skin. They would travel through your bloodstream, climb up your lungs, and settle comfortably in your warm intestines. This new farming lifestyle created a perfect, endless loop of reinfection that hunter-gatherers had rarely experienced before. The soil where they grew their food became heavily contaminated with invisible, microscopic enemies waiting to strike. Jared Diamond once described the agricultural revolution as one of the greatest mistakes in human history. Instead of a healthy, varied diet, early farmers ate mostly grain, making their immune systems weak and vulnerable. Malnourished bodies with weak immune systems were the perfect target for parasites to multiply without any resistance. But staying in one place was only half of the problem that our farming ancestors had to face. The other half was the brand new neighbors they invited to live right next to their homes. Humans began to live in extremely close contact with animals, sharing their tiny shelters with cows, pigs, and sheep. This close proximity allowed parasites to jump species, creating a whole new family of deadly human diseases. What nightmare creatures did our ancestors contract from their newly domesticated animals, and how do they still affect us? When your ancestors domesticated wild animals, they did not just gain food, wool, and labor for their fields. They also inherited a host of flat, segmented monsters that were waiting to conquer the human body. By eating undercooked meat from pigs or cows, you would swallow microscopic tapeworm cysts dormant in the muscle. Inside your warm gut, these cysts would hatch, attack their hooked heads, and grow up to 30 feet long. They would steal your nutrients, leaving your body thin, exhausted, and constantly hungry no matter how much you ate. Pigs also carried trichinosis, a roundworm that burrows into human muscles, causing excruciating pain and fever. Even your loyal dogs carried hydatid tapeworms, which could form massive, dangerous cysts inside your liver and lungs. These parasites adapted perfectly to the human body, turning our farm animals into vectors of constant physical torment. Concurrently, the waste from these farm animals polluted the nearby soil, creating a toxic environment around the village. Your ancestors were trapped in a cycle of feeding their animals, while the animals' parasites were feeding on them. But it was not just the dry dirt and the farm animals that carried these silent, invisible invaders. The very resource humans needed to survive every single day was also hiding a terrible, microscopic secret. Water, the source of all life, became one of the most efficient pathways for parasites to travel. Irrigation canals dug for crops created slow-moving water, which was the absolute favorite home of a deadly fluke. How did ancient farmers turn their life-giving water sources into a trap that infected millions with schistosomiasis? To water their fields, early farmers dug canals, creating stagnant pools where snails began to multiply rapidly. These tiny snails were the temporary hosts for a microscopic, swimming parasite known as the blood fluke. The moment you stepped into the water to work, these flukes would chemically detect your skin and burrow inside. Once inside your veins, they would travel to your bladder or liver, releasing thousands of spiny, irritating eggs. This chronic disease, schistosomiasis, caused severe internal bleeding, permanent organ damage, and bloated stomachs that looked like pregnancy. Archaeologists have found the eggs of these flukes in 5,000-year-old Egyptian mummies buried along the Nile. Hieroglyphs even describe a mysterious sickness where men would urinate blood, a direct symptom of bladder flukes. In ancient Egypt, catching this parasite was so common that men thought bleeding was just a male version of menstruation. The Nile, which allowed their grand civilization to grow, was simultaneously draining the blood and energy of its builders. And because they lacked clean wells, they drank and washed in the same water where flukes lived. This parasite did not just infect a few individuals, it plagued entire civilizations for thousands of years. The water that brought life to their dry fields also brought a slow, agonizing death to their bodies. But how did these unwanted tiny organisms move so quickly between people inside crowded early settlements? To find out, we must look at the exact place where all human waste ultimately ended up. What did scientists find when they dug up the prehistoric toilets of one of the world's oldest cities? 9,000 years ago, Çatalhöyük in modern Turkey was home to nearly 10,000 people living in mud brick houses. There were no streets. People walked on roofs and entered their homes through holes using wooden ladders. With so many prehistoric people packed closely together, the question of sanitation became an urgent, daily problem. Because they had no toilets or sewage pipes, residents dumped all their waste into large trash pits between houses. Archaeologist Piers Mitchell studied preserved human waste samples, known as coprolites, recovered from these ancient refuse pits. Under the microscope, he discovered the distinct, perfectly preserved eggs of both whipworms and giant roundworms. This evidence proves that the entire population of Çatalhöyük was living in a constant cycle of fecal contamination. Those flies landed on the waste in the pits, then flew directly onto the food people were preparing inside. Children played in the dirt nearby, accidentally swallowing the microscopic eggs that lay dormant in the soil. A single female roundworm inside a human gut can lay up to 200,000 eggs every single day. These resilient eggs can survive in the soil for years, waiting patiently for their next victim to arrive. Çatalhöyük was a thriving center of early culture, but it was also a biological nightmare of parasite transmission. This constant pressure of infection forced the human body to make a massive, long-term evolutionary choice. Your own immune system had to evolve powerful new weapons to survive this endless siege of worms. How did this ancient battle permanently rewrite your genetic code? And what weapons is your body still carrying? For millions of years, parasites and humans were locked in a silent, deadly, and continuous evolutionary arms race. If your ancestors' immune systems were too weak, the worms would kill them before they could have children. But if the immune system was too aggressive, it would destroy the host's own vital organs in the process. To survive, your body developed a specialized weapon, a class of antibodies called immunoglobulin E, or IgE. IgE antibodies act like searchlights, identifying worms and calling in white blood cells to attack the invaders. In response, parasites evolved molecules that could calm your immune system down, allowing them to hide undetected. They became masters of chemical disguise, releasing proteins that tricked your body into thinking they were not there. This created a delicate, tense balance where the parasite stayed alive and the human host survived the infection. Your body became accustomed to having these silent tenants inside, adjusting its immune response to accommodate them. Over thousands of generations, this constant presence of worms became the normal, expected state for your biology. Without this active internal combat, your immune system would have nothing to test its defensive weapons against. But did our prehistoric ancestors just sit back and let their bodies fight this battle entirely alone? They did not. They carefully observed nature and discovered clever ways to help their bodies fight the invaders. They found natural remedies in the forests and mountains, creating the very first medical treatments in history. What secret medicine did the Iceman Ötzi carry in his bag to fight the whipworms in his gut? When scientists searched the belongings of the Iceman Ötzi, they found two mysterious lumps of birch fungus. These fungi, called birch polypores, were threaded onto leather strips, suggesting they were highly valued tools. Birch polypores contain toxic oils that act as a natural laxative and kill parasites like whipworms. When Ötzi's stomach began to ache, he would chew on these bitter mushrooms to expel the worms. This is the earliest physical evidence of self-medication, proving that prehistoric humans understood how to treat infections. They did not have science, but they had thousands of years of trial, error, and sharp observation. Across the world, other hunter-gatherer tribes used similar toxic plants to paralyze and expel their intestinal parasites. By eating small doses of poison, they could save their bodies from being slowly consumed by worms. Even chimpanzees today swallow rough, hairy leaves to physically scrape parasites out of their complex digestive tracts. This ancient wisdom was passed down through generations, keeping humans alive in a world crawling with parasites.
Wow!
And now, you know it too. But as human societies grew larger and more powerful, the parasite problem did not disappear at all. In fact, as civilizations advanced into the historical eras, the worms only grew more abundant and widespread. Even the wealthy elites who lived in grand stone castles could not escape this democratic, internal plague. The dirty reality of the past spared no one, regardless of their status, power, or royal bloodlines. Which famous medieval king had his grave analyzed, revealing a stomach full of giant roundworms? In 2012, archaeologists in England made headlines when they discovered the long-lost skeleton of King Richard III. When scientists analyzed the soil around his pelvis, where his intestines once lay, they found roundworm eggs. While the soil outside his grave was clean, the soil of his abdomen was packed with parasite remains. This royal discovery proved that even a king who ate rich food was infested with giant roundworms. Richard III likely caught the parasite because medieval cooks washed vegetables with water contaminated by human waste. Medieval towns were notoriously filthy, with people dumping full-chamber pots directly onto the narrow, muddy streets. Rain would wash this waste into wells, contaminating the drinking water of both peasants and noble lords. The king's doctors had no idea how parasites spread, often blaming them on bad air or emotional stress. For thousands of years, having parasites was simply a normal, expected part of being a human being. From the poorest slave to the crowned king, everyone shared their body with a colony of worms. But in the last 2 centuries, modern plumbing, clean water, and effective medicine did something truly revolutionary. We wiped out the parasites from our daily lives, creating a clean, sterile world for the first time. Yet, this sudden cleanliness has triggered a brand new, unexpected health crisis inside our modern bodies. Why is our clean, worm-free lifestyle causing a dramatic rise in modern allergies and autoimmune diseases? In 1989, researcher David Strachan proposed the hygiene hypothesis to explain a strange modern medical trend. As modern societies became cleaner, rates of asthma, allergies, and autoimmune diseases began to skyrocket dramatically. Your own immune system evolved over millions of years to fight a constant battle against physical parasites. It is armed with IgE antibodies, ready to attack worms that are no longer there to fight. Without its ancient enemies, this highly trained immune army becomes bored and starts looking for trouble. It begins to aggressively attack harmless things like pollen, peanuts, or even your own healthy body tissues. Your allergies are not a design flaw. They are the phantom war of an army without an enemy. Your allergies are not a design flaw. They are the phantom war of an army without an enemy. Some scientists are now treating severe Crohn's disease by deliberately giving patients harmless pig whipworm eggs. When the worms hatch, they calm the immune system down, stopping it from destroying the host's intestines. This experimental therapy suggests that we might actually need our ancient companions to remain truly healthy. We spent thousands of years trying to escape them, only to realize they were part of our balance. Your modern body is a product of deep evolutionary time, shaped by a world of dirt and survival. You have conquered the parasites, but your biology still remembers the ancient rules of the wild. The next time you sneeze or itch from a harmless allergy, remember your long evolutionary history. For that sudden, sharp crawl deep inside your stomach is just a phantom echo of being never truly alone.